edition of Blue Collar Chatter. My name is Chris Madden. To my left,
Sean Egan.
I'm Dominic Collins.
I'm Devin Doss.
so we got a guest today, Devin Doss. Devin Doss, man, he's an honorable person in our local area. Has held many positions. He's been through the mud just like us, through the apprenticeship as a journeyman as well. But he holds a new position now, not really new to him, but new to you guys as an audience. And Devin's a perfect fit for this episode because we want to talk about some areas in which minorities are being helped. We know it's a lot of topic going on right now in regards to Black Lives Matter and how those things can be included in labor and labor unions, and how are the labor unions addressing these topics and issues. Well, Devin holds a position, so without further ado, I'm gonna pass it over to him. We're gonna talk to him about just what he does on a daily basis and how that helps minorities and people in rough situations, possibly. So
So really talk about the Indiana Plan. The Indiana Plan is an building trades outreach program, and it's with a heavy focus of getting women, minorities into skilled trades. But we also work with ex-offenders, disadvantaged workers, and overall, we like to go after high school students that may decide that they don't want to go to college, and they got another direction. But program's been around since 1970. In 1970, the trades came together. The trades came together with the community, and they decided they wanted to put together what's called a hometown plan. The Indiana Plan is that hometown plan that was put together in 1970, and that was put together to increase the number of women minorities into skilled trade and construction jobs, because back then it was an issue.
right.
And so we've been around since then. We're the only hometown plan left that was officially put together from that executive order. We're the only hometown plan left in the country. Everyone else, for whatever reasons, political reasons, I'm sure, they are no longer in existence. So I'm a product of the Indiana Plan. I went
Myself
through
too.
it.
I went through the same.
So it was, for me, it was life changing. It was exposing me to something that I never knew anything about, and I really didn't have a chance to find out about. But so that was big for me. And so the Indiana Plan is still around today to do some of the same things, is to go out, try to talk to people, recruit them to help those that may be disadvantaged or, just may not have the opportunity, may have made the wrong turn in life, and now they are, kind of just at a standstill, to help them find a good career. Union construction is that.
So there's room in construction, in labor unions, for people of that sort.
Yes. Yeah.
So how many classes a year would you guys hold?
So we have an office here and in Gary, Indiana. So we do 4 classes here in Indy and 4 classes in Gary.
Gotcha. And what's the average of the amount of attendees?
So here we average 15 per class.
Okay.
In Gary, we're around about 10 per class. Our main goal, we work with all the different trades, and so we try to give them the basic knowledge. I think that one of the disconnects is that a lot of people just don't know. And then you can't go out and say, I'm gonna grab a whole bunch of people and just push them into the trades.
Of course.
Because you'll have 90% of them that will fall off because they have no idea exactly what they're getting into and how to go about it.
Okay.
And so that pre-apprenticeship, if you will, or that boot camp, if you will, that early 2-week training can really help them understand what they're getting into, which will hopefully result in longevity in the trade.
So what do you go over in those 2 weeks to prepare them for the apprenticeship program?
So we kind of we got information on all the trades, and then we put together a basic curriculum. So everyone, they're on algebra 1, algebra 2. Tape measure reading is a must. Intro to apprenticeships is what we call it, where we teach about the apprenticeship. So we do the breakdown, we let them know that. Talk about the pay structure in construction. Safety is a big thing in all the trades, so we do the OSHA 10 safety. And then drug testing is big across the board. And so we make sure that they get drug tested. We help them get their driver's license. So those are the things that we try to cover, which will that way we can try to, like I said, we have 14 different trades that we partner with. And so therefore, we're trying to push them in 2 weeks, all in different directions.
Yeah, that's tough.
And so we have that basic curriculum that we hope that can cover all the basic entry level requirements that they may need.
So is it an age break? How old can a person? What's the lowest age and what's the highest age a person?
So just like the apprenticeship, we have our entry entry level age is 17. But you have to graduate from high school, so you have to have your high school diploma or GED.
Gotcha.
And then a max, we don't have a max.
Okay.
Just like the trades, if you can physically handle,
Yeah, sure.
the work, then you're good to go.
How would somebody go about trying to get in, starting their,
Yep, the process.
getting into here? Yeah.
They can just go on our website, indianaplan.org, and fill out an application there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we pull that application, if they have a valid driver's license, we see they have a high school diploma or GED, then we will mail them information on the next class.
See, if I would have known about this, I got in. I was lucky. I knew somebody, but had I not, I didn't know about the Indiana plan at all. I totally would have used this avenue to get in. I really like this. It's awesome. It's a good thing. Gets people back on their feet. Helps them out. It's good.
Yeah, and it kind of preps people, right? It's not like a back door or anything like that. They still got to go take the test.
Yep. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
up to,
apprenticeship.
so we just, like I said, we just help them understand what it's all about.
Yeah.
And then we send them out to take their, get their applications in.
Right.
And so like with the electricians, they have to get their application in, then they get scheduled for another aptitude test. So with us, you have an individual that may not have been very strong in math or didn't have math for 15 years. You get that refresher course 2 weeks going in to kind of get your mind back right.
Sure.
To get you going into that. But one thing I always say in reference to what you said, Sean, is sometimes in the world of construction, it's who you know that can get you there, but it's what you know that will keep you there.
I like
And so you can come to the Indiana plan and now you know somebody, but without that general skill set that will give you to send you out, you won't last long.
Right.
And so it's very important that you get that basic level education before you go out there.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah.
Now you know somebody, and now you know something.
Absolutely.
When you go out there.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Indiana plan and like the structure in general, how often are you guys like critiquing the curriculum? Do you stay in touch with the apprenticeships and make sure that you have up to date information and so on and so forth? Like how much is your communication with those other trades?
Yeah, so they have their coordinators meetings, and I attend those. But I also have all the email. I can email all the coordinators. I know most of the time when their CBA changes, that's when their wage sheets and all that would change. So then I'll email and get all the new information. So I stay in touch with them, just because I'm looking for opportunities and I try to connect them.
For those that don't know, what's the CBA?
Collective bargaining agreement.
Gotcha.
And so that is that agreement between all of your trades and your contractors. Come together and say, this is what we're going to do for the workers.
So you know what they actually need too. You know what they're requiring or what they're missing, versus some trades may need guys at this time, and then some trades may need guys at this time. You can kind of direct people in that way and guide them towards that.
And then help them make a good decision on what trade that fits them.
Good for them.
Because a lot of people, they go off the name.
Mhm.
Electricians is a very attractive name, very well known. And so when people come in, you'll get 80% of people saying, I want to be an electrician.
Right.
But you really don't know what it takes. And there's some people that I've said, you might want to look a different direction, because if you're not strong in math, then this may be a better trade for you. This may, and they think that electricians, the highest paid trade, and we're not.
Right.
And so once you bring that up to them, they're also like,
Right.
So it'll go from 80% coming in wanting to be electricians to 20% by the
Right.
time
Do
you're
you
done.
work with elevators union at all?
We got one guy in the elevator
Yeah,
construction.
they make the most.
They
Don't
make
they?
the most.
Yeah, man, they make.
And they're very, very small, and they're tight.
They got travel a little
And
bit.
they have control over they have total control over their conditions.
Right.
I mean,
Yes, they do. They don't have any competition.
Right.
So.
So just so you guys know, as an audience, like this is something we do locally in the state of Indiana. This program exists, like Devin was talking about. It's a homestead program, so in other cities, look for programs just like this. Most cities will have a program, something similar, if not the exact same structure, and sometimes it's small. Sometimes you have to call and ask questions. But if you are a minority, or if you are a person with, you know, a rough past, or you find it hard to get into apprenticeships, these are advantages to help equal the ability to get inside of these labor unions. Well, we know pay is better, benefits are better, all those things, your retirement, pension, those things exist. So that's what we want to improve on, is making sure those things are accessible. And sometimes you just gotta dig a little deeper. You know, we're trying to bring awareness to our locally, but if you live in Ohio, obviously Indiana can't do anything for you. But Devin might have some information about Ohio or something like that. Like, it's just all about making those connections. So, but as we leave from like the Indiana plan, what more do you think a program like this, do you think you could hold more capacity, like more people?
I think some of our main goals for growth, one would be to get back into other parts, regions of the state. So the Evansville, the Fort Wayne, the South Bend. We had offices there at one point, but then they got funding cuts. And so we had to close some of those offices, but it'd be good to get back into those areas. You know, construction is big, and especially it was big in Fort Wayne for a long time and big in Evansville. And so there have been a lot of opportunities there. I know also in South Bend they had that casino going up. And so it'd have been a good time to get in there and get some people opportunities. The biggest thing I hear, and I love to hear it all the time with the guys and the girls that go through the program, the biggest thing they say is, man, this is life changing. Because we have them come back and speak to the class. And when they come back and speak to the class, it's just interesting to hear them say that. Like, man, it's something to have a job that I feel like it's a career that I can see, you know, myself doing, and they love it. The pay scale, it's enough now where I can afford my bills, you know, the simple bills, the basic stuff, I can afford that now. And so that is big. And so to get individuals that type of job, a career-based type job, I think is very important. And we are union based, so let me put that out there to make sure. So whenever you're trying to look up information, make sure you type that union based program in there. Put it somewhere in your Google search so you know. But we are strictly union based.
Yeah. Got you. So as we kind of transition the conversation about like labor unions, and you talked about the Indiana Plan program, how it started in, what you say, the 70s? So there was a need. Obviously, we know we're not gonna go through the history of labor unions and stuff like that today. But if you got Google, you know, you could look it up and where the minority numbers were when it comes to those labor unions, and what was the goal and what was allowed and what's not allowed. So we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit. Like, what do the numbers say when it comes to some of the facts? When it comes to labor unions and getting minorities into labor trades, like what numbers did y'all come up with that you see where there's some differences?
When I did my research, I found a website, bls.org, and as of 2019, there were only 6.4 African Americans employed in the construction industry, while their white counterparts accounted for 88.1%. And I know personally, on every job site I've been on, I'm definitely the majority. Like, there's not very many people of color, you know, whether it's Mexican, African American on the job sites. It's majority.
That's across. That's all the trades.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Is like, that's why we come together and we have this conversation. It's like, where do we go from there? Like, once we get the numbers, how do we? Obviously, since the 70s, it's been an issue. It's been a necessity.
Still an issue.
Yeah, but it's to the point where we're willing to set up a program, you know what I mean, dedicated for this purpose. So, like, what other things did you come up with, Don?
Oh, about the same. In 1935, that's when the National Labor Relations Act, they allowed the right for collective bargaining And at that time, there was only, that number was less than 1%
Yeah.
black back then. And then fast forward to the 70s, when the Indiana Plan started, that's when they started doing a lot of integrating, not a lot, obviously,
Right,
but
right.
they started doing more integrating and trying to have more blacks into the trades.
Right.
So
Like as we talk about that, like now we're talking about more so the inequalities. And if we talk about the inequalities, then we can bring it back around to like how the Black Lives Matter and how that issue kind of hits home with labor unions. Like we've understood that some people don't see protests and stuff like that on this scale unless you go back in history and you talk about like union protests. You know what I mean? I remember walking down at the State House and protesting against right to work. And it's like that, you know, I can't remember too many other times, obviously, like the teachers unions down there and those type of things on the public and a private sector. Like this is for a whole different situation when it comes to equality as far as human life goes. So one thing we want to be clear, like we don't want to be remiss as to, you know, take for granted the loss of a life here. You know, this Black Lives Matter movement is not something that we take lightly, you know, but we just want to relate the fact that in the labor unions we go through a similar struggle with racism, you know, and with equalities when it comes to our pay, our day-to-day schedule. You know what I mean? Like what we experience on the job. So like we'll get into some of those numbers and some of those questions, but it's important that we want to just, our hearts definitely go out to the loss of life, you know, that we've experienced at this time. It's very important, you know, that we address that issue first and foremost.
And do you think, I'm not trying to say what you said is wrong by any means, because it's not, but do you think the fact that minority numbers in the construction industry is inequality or underrepresentation? Because like, to me, inequality would mean that people are blocking minorities from coming in, right? But at least in what we do, in our trade, that's not the case. There's just not that many applying, right? So like, I think there's an underrepresentation.
there have been instances of actually blocking minorities getting in. I can't say that happens
In ours.
in our local, but I know in 2015, sheet metal workers, they were sued for refusing to admit minorities. And I mean, I got a long list of other times when labor unions were sued for that same reason. So, I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. The black and brown people of color, they're not aware of these career opportunities. One, and then two, sometimes when they do find out, they get systematically discriminated against.
I'm proud of our trade though, because I don't feel like that happens very often.
Yeah, I think
As a
you
matter
do
of
a
fact,
good
you
job.
were one of the ones that interviewed me when I first got in.
But he was.
Oh, he was?
Hey, we all look alike.
Damn! That was bad timing.
Yeah. I don't know. I think sometimes those numbers can be skewed though too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think sometimes when we say minority, there's a requirement on how many minorities are interviewed and inducted into this pool, and that minority includes everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody that's non-white. So I think when you take that pool of people that's non-white and you can reach that percentage, whether it's 10%, 15%, or whatever, that you allotted for this, and then you break that number down. I mean, sometimes we've seen charts of that where it's broken down, where those numbers are broken down. It's like, ah, shit, it's not that many. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just that all of these people are combined into one bowl, and you're being served that just the full serving, not what's broken down.
Right.
So sometimes we see the numbers and sometimes, you know, we can't tell the difference. But I think as a general public, it's a difference. You know what I mean? Just if you were to break it down.
So on the, go ahead, sorry.
No, sorry. Coming from you know the experience that I've had, it's not necessarily you know, one of the things you mentioned, Chris, was that there is as far as people getting interviewed opportunities, there's a number that has to be met, and that's not the case. Not that I've ever seen. The number has to be met. It's kind of if you get your application in, you get scheduled for this aptitude test. If you pass the aptitude test, then you're scheduled for the interview. Now, if there's some disconnect there at the interview, then that may cause some problems. But everything else is just basic. It's just there's no human contact in that. It's just if you get your application, everything check off, then you're in there.
Right.
And then you take their test. If you pass that, then you're in there. The only human contact you come into is at the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there could be some disconnect there.
That interview's nerve-wracking too.
It is.
But you've been there.
But again, yeah.
You know what I'm
we've all
saying?
been
there.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
That's-
you know, you get to see it as it comes down the pipe. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's different. Us from the outside looking in, we like, man, I had like 4 minorities in my class, including myself, of like 16. So I knew the number as far as that goes, and I knew the class next to me that was 6 months behind. There was 1 minority in the whole class of about 16 or 17. So it was just, you know, you look around yourself and you're like, man, there's something seemed a little off. You know what I mean? But we looking at it down the pipe. We don't know how many people were at the door, you know what I mean, and just didn't make it in.
Right.
And so that's a different perspective, you know, where you get to see how many people are actually coming through and got the same opportunity as the next person. You know what I mean?
And believe it or not, I would say those numbers of interview, people that are actually make it to the interview for minorities are probably the same as the percentage in the trade.
Yeah.
It's probably the same.
Yeah.
As far as getting to the interview process itself, it's probably 14% of the people interviewed. So that are minorities.
Does the Indiana plan help prepare them for this aptitude test also?
We do the best we can.
So this would be so people that don't have the same advantages as other people, like if they need help, they can come here and get that help.
We get them tutoring. We have tutoring sessions in the evenings.
That's awesome.
We try to do everything we can to get them ready for that aptitude test. You know, it's just like you said. We could probably send 50 people a week to the door. It's just how many are actually ready. You know, once you get there,
Prepared.
Yeah, the valid driver's license, to pass the drug test. Those are all the things that I've encountered going through. And I'm not saying that is everyone.
No.
I'm just saying the
Common hurdles.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is tough. If we can get past that, yes, I can change my recruiting efforts to go to, you know, some of the colleges or some of the right out of the high schools. But even the high schools, then you got to get into the mental process of it. You know, are they mentally ready for the trades? Because we all know that it's not something you just walk into.
Right.
Yeah.
The mental aspects of the trade, and again, not having a valid driver's license. There's not very many high school students that come out, especially in the minority community, that come out with a valid driver's license.
Right.
And that's a hurdle. And so, within a lot of trades, they require a valid driver's license.
Right.
That is a hurdle in itself.
Which obviously it's not something uncommon. I mean, we all made it to where we're at right now, and we did it sometimes at a younger age or whatever. So those things, it's just like where can we change? Like how far back do we have to go? You know, how deep do we have to go in order to help hurdle the disadvantage? We don't want to say that minorities don't get into the trades, because they do. It's just that, well, once they get into the trades, now what? You know what I mean? Or is the same opportunity available for our minorities, you know, getting into the trades? Have we allowed them the same access into the trades and prepared them? And then how have we done in keeping them in there? You know, I think that's where the conversation rolls after you after what you said, like, it's not that we're not getting them to the interview table. You know, they have the opportunity. We have the opportunity. We made it, so it can happen.
So speaking of, on the topic of underrepresentation, what do you think the pros of diversifying the labor pool are?
I think the diversifying the labor pool would help society in general. There's a huge wage gap between white workers and black workers,
Unless you're in a union.
unless you're a union. And if we allow if more minorities were to take advantage of these opportunities, we would experience a shrink in the wage gap, because, like I said, in the union, everybody is on the same playing field for the most part. So
As far as pay goes, yeah.
I think it would help with that, just building up the society.
Absolutely.
So there was a time when it was a lot higher, but that was the time of the 80s and 90s, when the
Factors.
Ford, GM, Chrysler, that hosted a lot of minorities in the UAW mainly. You know, those were large unions that somehow their minority numbers were a lot higher than some of the other skilled trades. And I just wonder, like, where can we go with that? You know what I mean? Like, what can we
learn from them?
Yeah, what can we learn from them? What things did they do in order to attract minority workers, and to the point of they wanted to be there. I knew a lot of long-term 30, 40-year members that, are now living out a pension and retirement, a good one too.
Oh, yeah.
I think we could, the building trades could do more aggressive marketing and advertising towards that desired target. I mean, maybe it's not desired, but that intended target. Like we just keep saying, like, a lot of us just don't know about it.
Yeah.
Just unaware. So I think you said 14% of applicants. If we could see that number of just applicants rise, in theory, then there'd be more minorities in the trades.
Yeah.
So,
Which our local is reaching out to schools and high schools and in the inner city, which I think is awesome. I mean, I know we're trying.
That's where the heart of our jurisdiction is.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So you would think that's where the heart of our membership would come from. Unfortunately, in our particular, I wouldn't say this is opinion. It's more opinion than fact. It doesn't seem as if our membership comes from the city as much as the surrounding areas.
Definitely not the older generation. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
but that's
Absolutely.
a fact about unions.
Yeah.
Somewhere between, I think I read somewhere between like 40 and 60 years old is the average age group.
Yeah.
And that's just the numbers. You
Yeah,
know what
young
I mean?
people
Unions don't seem attractive to younger generations.
Young people are a minority in itself, just in our union. I mean, yeah. They want a desk job, or they think college is the only way,
Right.
and that's not true.
Right.
I think diversifying labor pool also addresses the labor shortage that we have right now. Also,
untapped labor pool.
untapped labor pool. Yeah, but like Chris said, and everybody has mentioned, kind of how do we get that out there effectively to people? How do we do that? Whether it be marketing or
Right.
yeah.
In my opinion, it enhances your creativity
Yeah.
across the trades.
Yeah.
Different perspectives.
Because it's just that you have people that think different. Even bringing in women, they say that women are better craftsmen than men, and so therefore you're possibly missing something that can bring that creativity and that something enhance the trade in general. And so that's why I think the diversity is important on my end of it. Again, we can hit these high schools. We can recruit from different areas. We can put out the media blasts on black TV stations, and on minority-based TV stations, and radio stations. We can do all this, but until we knock down or we help individuals get past some of those entry-level barriers. For example, coming into doing some of the interviews, you will see that and some of the questions, or some of the, you know, from where you come from, may determine on some of your answers to those questions. And so if you grew up, you know, fortunate enough to have that grandfather, or that father, or that uncle in your life that was putting tools in your hands, making you fix the mower, making you ride this moped, repair your own moped, fix your own bike, they gave you some type of hands-on experience.
Mechanical.
Yes, and also you can tell, and I'm just gonna say young men, because that's what I know about. You can tell when a young man comes in, and if he has some military experience, or if he had a parent that was stern in their life, you could tell coming in.
Yeah.
Just by the way they talk to you, the way they sit up, the clothing, like you can tell coming in if they had an influence in their life that was positive and pushed them to be a better person.
Yeah.
Just coming in, and so you can bring those numbers and flood the doors, but I mean, it will increase. It will, but it would also increase that drop off.
Yeah.
So that's the question that, you know, I've come to in some of our other close conversations is like, are we ready? Are the labor unions ready to accept this demographic as much as we're ready to bring it in? And I bring that up because of the seated kind of racism that sits inside of some of these labor unions from its beginning. I mean, the 70s, you know, seems like a long time for us, but you got to think that this program was started in the 70s. So up until the 70s, it was an issue. It took some time before that it started to make a change in the percentages. So you could say another 10 or 15 years. Now we're talking about mid 80s. Some of those people are still around, or they hold leadership positions. And so if you have a person who did not look for diversity at that time in the 80s, and now they're still in leadership positions or influencing leadership in the 2020, are they ready to accept a more diverse membership? That's one thing I ask myself. Like I mean, obviously it's a personal issue, you know, but if we've seen racism on the job, like how have we dealt with it? How do we process that information? And even in 2020, I mean, it's not uncommon.
Yeah, so that's a good time to go into a talking point that we had. If we could all like talk about a time we witnessed or experienced racism, whether it be on the job or off the job. If anybody has anything, or I can start.
I got one. Working with a guy, and he never said anything to my face, but he would say a lot of nasty things to one of our coworkers, and that coworker he would run back and tell me everything he said.
It was a white guy.
Yeah, they're both white.
Yeah.
So one is the older guy, one's the racist guy was the older guy, and he would anything that I did, he had something to say to this other guy, and the guy would run and tell me everything he said. If you don't like me, it doesn't bother me. You know, I don't need everybody to like me to feel good about myself, but it bothered me that he would run up to me every time he saw me and just try to speak, like hide the fact that he just said all these nasty things behind my back, and try to shake my hand. Oh, what's up, buddy? Or oh, hey Dom, like just trying to be all in my face. It burned me up. It took everything in me not to put my hands on him.
I think I dealt with the same guy, but
You did.
For the sake of the success of this show, we not gonna mention names, but
Right.
you know, yeah.
So it was like this one particular time we were swapping out lights in a stairwell, and I probably needed an 8-foot ladder, but I was stretching out on a 6-foot ladder, and I was coming down, and if I would have had an 8-foot ladder, I probably wouldn't have dropped the light. But nobody was around. Nobody was in danger. And it was the light was trash, so it didn't have to be in good condition or anything. So I ended up, it slipped out of my hand, and the light crashed to the ground. Nobody was around. It was not an issue. It was not a big deal. I picked up my mess, and he's up there, and the racist guy is up there telling the other guy, yeah, that's just how monkeys are. They just have to make a commotion. They just tear up stuff. And it just blew me away, because like I said, we were demoing. It was a trash light. It didn't matter. It wasn't a big deal. But he's talking like
something in his heart, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. It's like, it's not about work. It wasn't about the trade. It was
Right.
something in his heart. You know what I mean? No matter what you did, whether you been down to tie your shoes, it'd have said something. You know what I mean? It
Right.
had something to say.
But yeah, and like I said, it didn't matter what I did.
Yeah.
But it bothered me that he would try to be my friend in my face, and he's had all this stuff
Coward.
back.
Yeah. That's the best way. That's my favorite. I didn't understand that word until I met people like that. Cowards. A person who literally would not say it to your face.
Yeah.
And that type of thing is when we get on the job, like, we just want respect. That's it. We want respect, just like another person, just like another man or woman. We want respect for what we do, and if we can't have that, then it's like it makes it hard for us to go to your job. Knowing that guy was saying those things that it's just like, man, how do I approach the situation? From that point forward, and it's not like something you can go forward with any kind of filing charges or anything, because it's a he said, she said. Now, I mean, you can in a roundabout way. If you go through our Constitution and bylaws, you could say, hey, this person knows something wrong and they didn't say nothing, but now you include a third party.
Right.
Whereas, like you said, a person's not going to say that person is crafty with his racism. He knows how to indirectly be racist.
Right.
And that's the hard thing that we face sometimes on the job site, is like, we face indirect racism. It's not that he come up to you and call you the N-word. It's the fact that he made moves in order to put you in a bad situation.
That happens more often. For me, I got plenty of them, but one in particular, working kind of far away from home. I'm kind of the only black guy on the job in the area. I'm kind of roughing in a room. I got my little cart there, and park my cart there, and we all go to lunch. Like I said, I'm kind of far away from home. Park my cart there, come back from lunch, and it's a noose hanging over my cart. Somebody has, got this noose there. Now that, for me, is a threat to my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know some people think, man, it's just no, that is a threat to my life. I feel like that I'm now. So I got my foreman, at the time, and I said, hey, come here, man, look at this. And the foreman just took a knife and cut it down and said, oh, shit, excuse my French. And he walked off. And here I am. Nobody's gonna take this serious with me. I don't know who did this. I don't know where it happened. When it happened, it just was here, And so that makes you uncomfortable. You still got to come back. You still got to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
But who do you say? Who do you talk to? Where do you go with this type of stuff? You don't want to say pull me off the job. You don't want to say I'm not coming back. You need that paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
But that along with other I came outside one time on a different job and I had KKK newspapers on my car.
See, that's something white people we don't have to deal with. We don't deal with racism on the job site. That's something that only you can speak on, because I
just imagine the mental, the mental strength you have to have in order to continue to do your job.
no, that would be
and
hard.
we work in a dangerous, setting where it's like, damn, I have to focus on this, but on the flip side, I have to worry about how I'm gonna get home. You know what I mean? And I, at all costs, I'm gonna protect myself.
Yeah, you should.
But it's necessary that just imagine coming to work and just doing your job and just going home, you know what I mean? Not having to think about those other things. Mine has been more systemic, being in a leadership role as a foreman, and being kind of pushed to the side, or pushed Chris is a foreman, but he's not the guy. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of they walk over you, or as soon as you fulfill that position, you right back with your tools and doing your thing. I've never experienced it in that way outside of like reading the N-word written on Porterlet. You know what I mean? And that's common. But those are things like we've
It
all
shouldn't be
seen.
common, but
But
it
it's
is.
those are
Yeah.
common, and being the only black person on the job, you know what I mean? Being like 30 plus guys and being only black person on the job, and you see the N-word written on your Porterlet, I mean, you know, and you walk around a job site and guys are like, hey buddy, you know, about this and that, and it's like you get to a point where you don't trust anybody.
Right.
And that's what's hard. It's like you got to be able to trust each other working in this environment. And so dealing with racism, it creates so much static inside the unions that's not seen. That you know we can't put a number to. We can't put a number to those experiences. You know what I mean, that you guys have seen. So it's tough.
Yeah, I think that's where we have to police ourselves. You know, like that the other guy that I mentioned, the younger guy who was hearing everything that this racist person was saying, it probably would have been a tough conversation for him to have, but I think he would have been the right person to kill it. You know,
Yeah.
let him know that that's not tolerated here. You know, if that's what you want to say, if that's what you want to talk about, don't talk about it to me.
Right.
Or just he could have nipped it in the bud. I told him that, so hopefully the next time he's in that situation, he can handle it different. But if we don't police ourselves and hold ourselves accountable for our actions, then things will never change, and it'll be 2070, and somebody will be talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the Black Lives Matter movement and some other things that we talk about with police accountability.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the police got to be able to police themselves.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to be able to, if he wasn't going to do it around you, then it was up to, whoever he was around to be able to check him
Yeah.
and say, hey, this is, because it's not going to happen right in front of me, and even if it happens in front of me and I check it, it's probably not going to go in my favor at the end of the day, because, a lot of times if it's easier to get rid of, me than it is to try to deal with, whoever else that you may have to get rid of and have that problem and have that issue of them saying, hey, why'd you get rid of him? He was a great guy. He was a foreman. He was good. Instead of saying, well, you got rid of the new guy.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I
easier
face
to
more
move
than
the new guy,
anything. It's like just not being willing to have the conversation. You know what I mean? People are just not willing to have the conversation, makes someone uncomfortable. But it's just like, how more uncomfortable do you think that minority worker feels being in that situation versus you just having the conversation and saying, look, I don't want you to be a target for people in this trade. So I'm going to stand up for one another. That's all we ask. It's like, if a person is showing up late to work and he's not doing his job, that's a totally different conversation. But if this guy is just as qualified as the next guy, why isn't he given the same opportunity? And that is the systemic racism that we talk about. That's the part that is hard to, you can't like pinpoint it and be like, oh, that move right there, because everybody has a resume, everybody's worked hard.
Yeah, it's not just one.
Yeah, it's not just one instance or one person.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. It's just you ask the question like, why not? Why not this person? And when you look at our leadership, like across the board when it comes to skilled trades, and this is not to play down any minority in a leadership role. Like, you guys have worked hard to get everywhere you at. You know what I mean? And it's not because you are a minority you got there. You work just like everybody else. But it's just that the rest of the skilled trades we look for, we're like, well, why not more? Why isn't it more balanced across the board when it comes to our representation?
Yeah, those opportunities. And one thing I think that we'd be remiss to talk, we should definitely talk about, that we all could have a conversation about is, the sexism in the trades.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fact that, there was a example one time that there was a discussion on how do we get more women? How do we get more women? We need more women. We're willing to open up. And this was a city councilman talking about, why aren't there more women? We need to get more women. And the trades are, the majority of the trades, and I'm talking from the apprenticeship level, they want to do this with open arms.
Yeah.
Majority of your contractors are willing to do it with open arms. But the thing I say, and not to compare women to anything else, but I'm saying, okay, it's almost like saying, okay, I need to go out and not compare this to women. I want to get more sheep, but I'm not willing to hunt down and get rid of the wolves.
Yeah.
I mean, you can bring in all of them, but they're just going to eat them up.
Right.
Like they're going to. So why are you saying I'm not willing to address the wolves first?
Right.
But let's do this. It's
Because it's hard. That's
yeah,
why.
it's hard.
That's
Like
why.
you
hard.
said, like
You
you
know,
said.
Yeah.
You gotta
Checking
be able
ourselves.
To, you gotta be able to
You know
handle
what I mean?
that first. If you're gonna bring in this, and you gotta handle the racism. If you're gonna bring in
certain
this, you gotta handle the sexism.
Sexism,
If
yeah.
not, you are opening yourself up to problems.
It's laziness
And they know
too,
it.
I feel like, because it's easier to ignore certain problems
It is.
than to try to understand them. And with
Yeah.
the whole, going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, this is on everybody's mind, but, damn, I forgot where I was going. What was I talking about before this?
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Sexism. That's all right.
Sexism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, I just had a brain fart. Straight up brain
I
fart.
mean, we have it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
And
but
so
it's just like we know we've worked with women that can perform the task.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not that it's so unreachable. It's just not past custom. It's just not past practice to have women in this trade. But that's not fair.
I
You know
had
what
a
I mean?
supervisor once. The guy he was a foreman. He originally became he eventually became a supervisor. But as a foreman, his words out of his mouth was, "Why would I hire a woman to as a foreman when I could have a man as a foreman and do twice as much as a woman could?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I don't know where that example came from."
Yeah.
I was like, "But I think that's racism."
Yeah.
But then he eventually became your superintendent. So he's a guy that is in charge of manpower.
Yeah.
So that means that he will never hire a female foreman because in his mind, that's his belief.
And so what like that's where like I'll compare myself in my progression as far as my growth in the union trades, and it's like I will only beat my head against the wall so many times before I'm just like, okay, what is the solution? How can we change this narrative? How can we change? We can't change the world. But if we can change like locally how we do things, like how do we structurally change that?
Got to change the way we treat each other.
Right. Got to change the culture.
Yeah, and what I was going to say before whatever happened up in my head, it's easier to ignore the bigger issue than to try to understand it and how it relates to the Black Lives Matter movement. Like the people that say all lives matter, it's easier just to say that than to actually step into a black man's shoes or get to know, if they're uncomfortable being around the opposite color, get to know one, ask them questions. It's laziness, I think. I mean, they don't want to. It's easier just to. Ignorance is bliss. It's easier to be ignorant. It's hard to understand things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Changing the culture, it would definitely help. That way, the women and the other minorities can go out and share good experiences with other people, and that would encourage them to maybe have some type of interest in the trades. But if all they have is negative, stories to share with people, then why would another minority or why would another black man or another woman go sign up to be treated bad? Like nobody's gonna sign up for that. So until we change the culture, I don't know when things will look any different.
Yeah, I don't know what direction we can go. It's harder for us, but we have broke through some barriers. It's hard for women, but we know some that have broke through the barriers. It's even harder for Hispanics.
Yeah.
That may come over with the language barrier. We've had some Hispanics come here. It's even hard for Hispanics to go through the Indiana plan.
Yeah, I was about to ask that.
Because coming here, you ask for that high school diploma or GED. They don't have it. The language barrier. We don't have an instructor. We don't have anybody that can translate. And even then, you still have to take an aptitude test.
Yeah.
That is not,
It's in English.
Yes, it's going to be in English. So
Yeah.
there are barriers for them as well. Just talking across the board, just for all minorities. You know, again, there's just some changes it's going to have to make and see what it does, and then, all right, that didn't work, so let's tweak it a little bit and try it again.
Yeah.
Tweak it a little bit more and try it again. The Indiana plan's been around. I feel like it's been effective, but yet,
Yeah, I mean,
it's, you know, in all these other states, it's gone.
without question. Yeah.
And so, how do they do it without it? You know, what are they doing without it? But you want to look more. You want your trades to look more like your population.
Yeah, that's
You
that's the
definitely
big
want
thing.
that.
And your leadership too. You want your leadership to look like the membership.
That's where I was going with it, more or less. It's like I think a lot of the narrative that we've been seeing here lately about some of the things that's happened publicly is lacking leadership. Obviously, we have a president who says things at times that promotes what we would call violence or protests or whatever, or kind of stirs the pot, as we would say. If that leadership was different, you got to ask, would the outcome be different?
Yes.
So on the same topic, it's just that in our union trades and our labor unions, if our leadership was different, now I'm not saying putting unqualified people in leadership roles. I mean, everybody that I would say, you know, fits those roles would be fully qualified for the position. And training and so on and so forth. But it's just like, can we change the narrative by changing who is at the table, so to speak? As we
Absolutely.
talk about, when we talk about, you know, it's the same thing we talk about in politics. You know, you don't want to put somebody there who doesn't have your interest. So you put the people there with your interest, and eventually your interests become priorities.
So you and I we argue about everything, but we've argued about this before too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The lack of diversity in leadership, you know, from my perspective, I don't see that many people stepping up to even try or want to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's up to people like you, Dominic, Devin, me. I mean, we all have stepped up in some way, some bigger than others, but we've all taken that step. But the minorities that we have in our local, most of them aren't even involved in the local. You know, is that because they don't want to be? Is it because they don't understand? Is it because they're like afraid to be? I don't know.
They feel like maybe they don't fit in. Maybe.
Yeah,
You know, it's
okay.
hard to-
I was about to
I get-
say.
yeah.
It's hard. It's different. Like you know, all of us are active, very active, and at any event, a lot of times it's not the type of, maybe the music might be different than what we might listen to, or
For sure.
it's everything. Like it's a different culture, and sometimes everybody's not as comfortable in different surroundings as other people. I like to be around and I like to see different things. So it doesn't bother me as much to be somewhere and be one of 100. You know.
But what I think though, I think the numbers are very comparable though. And I think if you look at how many white members that we have, and then you take that and say, okay, out of the 2,000 white members that we might have, and I know those are not the exact number, but I'm saying out of maybe 2,000 white members, how many actually participate?
That's so like percentage.
And that might be 10%. And so if you go out of 100, you know, African American members, or how many participate? It'll be 10%.
That's
those numbers would be
different. Yeah.
You know, if you look at it that way, those numbers are going to be the same.
Yeah.
And so,
Percentage.
you know, so therefore, if you go all the way back to the apprenticeship and getting in, those overall numbers being low, everything else is going to remain low.
Yeah.
Because that you're starting out.
Yeah. Your
You know?
foundation is
And so, you know,
That's a really good point.
if you increase everything, then I think everything will happen.
Going back to the apprenticeship, do you think, I know you talked about how you can tell coming in some of the applicants, how they were brought up or how, if they're qualified possibly. Do you think that the process is culturally biased maybe?
It can be, but the way I had this at a conference once, and he talked about people letting their preference become a prejudice, and that was that hit home with me because you get
bias.
you get a guy that come in, just for example, You get a guy that come in that will say, and this is why diversity is important on that apprenticeship committee. And I think it should be that way across every apprenticeship committee.
Yeah, I agree.
But you got a guy that comes in and he said, he was a farmer. He grew up on a farm. I have no idea. I know nothing about a farm. The only thing I know about is I can spell it. That's it. I don't know nothing else about a farm. So with that young man coming in saying he works on a farm means nothing to me. I know, but then we had another committee member years ago that he grew up on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a young kid comes in and he grew up on a farm, he was like, "Oh, I know how hard you work.
Yeah.
I know you had to get up at 4 a.m. and do this. I know you had late nights. I know you had long weekends."
Yeah.
I'm still sitting here like, what do you do? You know what I mean? You get to pet you get to pet animals. Like I have no idea. But I'm saying for him, it lit up.
Right.
That made him say, "Man, it hit home."
He qualified.
Yes, and then when you get a young lady that comes in and says, "Hey, I was a stay-at-home mom."
Yeah.
We're all right, But if you have a female on the apprenticeship committee that may say, "I'm a mom and I made it this far,"
Mhm.
and that don't mean that she's
It's a
not
good point.
qualified,
It's a good point.
And so it's very important to have that diversity because everybody has a different point of view.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they get a different impression from other people. Somebody come in and say, "Hey, I was on the swim team and I made this, and this,"
Yeah.
and you got that committee person that but that's not going that deep. I mean, that's
Right,
easy,
but that's
yeah.
specific.
I'm saying
yeah.
diversity comes with life experiences,
Yeah.
and so when you have that person that comes in that you can kind of relate to, you just got to be careful of that not becoming a prejudice because it's kind of a preference.
Right.
Military person. I mean, I know nothing about the military, but you get someone in, and if any of the board members are military background, and they know they're kind of
Yeah.
impressed by it.
They automatically have that level of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to have that on the apprenticeship committee, in all levels, to me,
Yeah.
across the board, in that room. So
And it's tough. It's tough to cover all those areas in such a small committee.
Right.
Considering, and this is to touch on several other committees outside of just our local, but most committees you have decisions being made by 5 to 10 people, like that judge decisions for 25 to 5,000 people. You know what I mean? It just depends on the large or the number of your membership.
Mhm.
So considering that's a tough filter to have, where you have one that can sift through all the stuff and say, okay, we got one person that relates to that, one person that doesn't.
But it's interesting that there's an apprenticeship up north, and I won't throw their name up there, a trade up north that they don't do in-person interviews.
Oh, wow.
Everything is paperwork.
Mm.
Everything is paperwork. Their interviews come off of a type of essay questionnaire that you do.
However good you can
So-
make it
And
sound.
that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to rid out that bias that may come with in-person
That
interviews.
essentially makes it colorblind. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and so they're doing that. Only thing is, if you missed anything, they throw it away.
That kind
But
of sucks though too.
it's some up and down to it.
But yeah.
But they're trying.
Yeah, I
They're
guess.
saying, let's try this.
I think that's a good idea.
You know?
But yeah, they're
And
obviously they're
But that's what they're doing, and I was like,
It's something different.
Yeah.
But but a lot of us know that sometimes you can look at the answers and tell where they're from, what they're doing, maybe even, you can, and if you read deep enough, you can see that stuff.
The interview process we went through, I probably would have rather have done something on paper than
Yeah.
in person.
I don't know if I would have made it.
Yeah, I mean it's just interesting that someone tried to do something different, and they did it just because of that.
Yeah,
They did it just because of the bias that exists in.
That's tough, but they got my wheels spinning about like different ways. You can interview people that kind of takes it out of it.
Imagine if they treated court like that. Like you don't see the person in court, the judge doesn't. You know what I mean?
Tommy
That'd be
Kill,
weird.
Okay.
Conrad. Now imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine she was black.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So, but yeah, I saw one of your points on here, police unions, and that is interesting. To wonder, are they really like our unions? They can be, really kind of favor the members more than what is right or what is wrong.
Representation.
They favor those members. Wonder if the police union is similar.
Well, I would say that they absolutely are. If we think about all the times that officers are caught, the many times that bad officers are caught on camera doing something questionable, and to us, I mean, it's cut and dry. They're wrong,
Yeah.
but somehow, you know, they get sent home with pay, you know,
Reassigned.
reassigned or
If they get fired, they can apply somewhere else.
apply somewhere else. Yeah.
Yes.
So I would say they're pretty strong, but I wish they wouldn't protect the ones that didn't deserve to be protected, because it
Yeah.
kind of builds that wedge between the community and the.
Do you know if they're part of the AFL-CIO?
There's-
Or I think they are.
They are.
Nah,
They're not?
I haven't seen them.
Yeah,
but
Are
I've
they?
seen them.
I've been seeing stuff
I think
online
they
that
are.
they want
Yeah,
the AFL to kick them out of it.
yes, yep.
I know that it was that was another thing I noticed when looking at some of these numbers is you have the public sector and the private sector, and
Union-wise,
typically,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
union wise, and typically when they do the numbers, it is combined. So that's what I was talking about earlier when you talk about skewed numbers.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes
There's a difference between private and public
huge
sector
difference.
unions. Yeah, there
Huge
is.
difference.
Yeah.
And some of those, like you mentioned, I think in one of our past podcasts, Dominic, about the numbers as far as the teachers union. The numbers are huge,
Yeah.
but that encompasses so many different people, and it's like when you bring those numbers and you include them in some of like the government representation. I know I wrote down some that were in the public sector. It was the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal, and then the American Federation of Government Employees, Postal Workers, Firefighters. Those are all public sector union workers. Now, as much as we want to represent any labor union, we know that those unions are a little different than the private sector. Private sector is pretty much anything else. You know what I mean? Anything that's non-government is the private sector. And in the private sector, those numbers dwindle tremendously compared to the public sector. So that's one thing. It's kind of hard in finding those numbers and what like we've been talking about our personal experiences compared to what the numbers say. And you know, if you don't dig deep enough, you won't be able to find it.
Right. Yeah. I experienced the same thing when I was researching the numbers. When I first started looking at it, it was saying like, oh, it was 40%, 50%. I'm like, hold on,
Yeah.
that don't sound right.
Yeah.
So as I dug more, you search like building trades,
Yep.
and you see those numbers that you mentioned about like 6% or 10%.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot lower than the 40s and the 50% of the other unions.
You gotta be very particular. That algorithm, you know, the Google algorithm, it's only gonna use certain words and certain specifics, you know what I mean, to give you what you're looking for.
Right.
That's what's tough, but we know from our personal experience, like what we've seen. And I mean, this is a progressive conversation where it's just like, we know this conversation is not gonna be the end all be all, it's gonna change everything. Nor do we know that we're not just doing this for fun. Like we want to bring in, educate people as much as we can, and grow from this. So it's just like it's a constant. I think I want to say addressing of the current issues. Whereas we don't want to we're not sitting up here complaining.
No.
No.
You know,
Definitely,
we see what it is.
Yeah.
We all doing our part. You know, and so we encourage like the people watching do the same thing. You know, if you see a disconnect or inequality in your local area, do the same thing. Like become part of the leadership. Find out what those numbers are in your local unions or local areas, and see how you can change it if you feel like it needs to be a change.
Right.
To follow that up, as far as white-black goes, what can white people, allies of, African American people, what can we do to better the situation or help you out?
I think like what I mentioned earlier about changing the culture. When you witness something, you see something that just isn't right, you should address it. Like it doesn't ever have to make it past your ears if you clean it up when you hear it. I'm sure that's probably a hard conversation to have because it may be superior, a supervision,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
an owner of a company or something. It might be someone that you don't want to have it with, but until those conversations happen,
Things aren't gonna change.
things won't change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to just set in your mind that no matter what the situation is, you're gonna do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that they would do the same thing in the police department. I wish they would do the same thing in politics. At the end of the day, what's right is what's right.
Yeah.
No matter what it tears down, no matter who it ends,
Yeah, what's
whatever, I'm just gonna do what's right. And at the end of the day, if I die tomorrow, I know that I died knowing that I did what's right.
Yeah.
And I wish they would just do that. Same thing in the trade. You know what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And you know if somebody's getting treated wrong.
Right.
And therefore, if you treat it wrong, I'm gonna say it, man, you treated them wrong.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
even if you start there.
historically, we've done a good job of that.
Mhm.
It's like, you know, we don't stand for people being mistreated on the job, except for when it comes to diversity and racism and stuff like that. Literally, you don't hear. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. Just saying we don't hear it as much as if a contractor's mistreating their workers,
Right.
and people stand up against that, or if a union is not standing for its members, people standing up for that. You know what I mean? We quick to see. We experienced that in St. Louis, where one union, the Carpenters Union, wasn't it?
Yep.
Oh,
Was
yeah,
not-
yeah, yeah.
They were allowing some shit to go on that they
They were allowing it was electricians to be represented under them, but they were getting paid less than,
Yep.
Yeah.
than scale in that
Yeah.
area. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
when we took
So-
a picture with that blow up rat.
Exactly, with the rat and everything else. Like,
That was
just
cool.
imagine if you had that same focus when it comes to inequalities
Yeah.
inside of local unions. Like, you know, we wouldn't stand for it.
Yeah.
We're willing to put two people out on the front of on the road. You know what I mean, with
Yeah.
signs and blow up rats. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like that extra step.
Mhm.
I think can really change things.
Well, I think a lot of things are changing right now. At the 2020,
I
a lot of
think
people are
you're
taking
right.
a lot of extra steps to let their voice be heard. And
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
keep going,
Mhm.
keep going,
Yeah.
keep
It's
letting
gonna be a
that
lot of
voice be heard.
unfortunate situations, but it's been
It
a lot of
is.
unfortunate decades.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
And you
It's
know,
been a long road.
yeah.
speaking, I printed something off because I have a lot of conservative, white friends that don't agree with what's going on. And I mean, I'm not saying I personally am not advocating the destruction of local businesses. I'm not advocating that at all. But at the same time, people are mad, they're sad, they're scared. But prior to the 1960s, rioting or race riots consisted of whites burning down and destroying black communities simply because they didn't want them there. So that's crazy right there. White people did that to the black community, and that mentality has spilled over. So when people say it's 2020, that shit doesn't exist anymore, that's not true, because those parents of these people, that mentality has been essentially passed down. Now, not everybody, but a lot of people, that kind of mentality has been passed down. And like, people are making a big deal about this, which again, I'm not advocating burning down businesses, but at the same time, look what white people did in the past. I mean,
And they
it's pretty
say,
fucking crazy.
you hear it all the time to that point, and you've done some research, so you get a different understanding of it.
Yeah.
People won't take the time to do the research to get a better understanding of the situation that's going on in the world.
Mhm.
But you go back to saying that, well, why can't, individuals or minorities just go build their own? Well, every time we do, you come and burn it down because it's growing too much, it's growing too fast.
Black
And-
Wall Street.
Yeah, and now the dollars are
Rosewood.
going here. Yes, and that's what you're talking about. We
Yeah.
built neighborhoods, we built businesses, we built
Yeah.
Wall Street.
Yeah.
So we're saying, okay, well, that's fine. We won't utilize yours, but we're going to utilize our own, and we'll start to build, only to get it burned down. It's like, why are you
That's-
burning it down?
That's where you got to do the history.
Yes.
And
You gotta
I
do the
think
research.
if the people understood the history, then this would not seem out of pocket. I find it exciting at the same time, concerned, because it's different. I like history. So I mean, all those Rosewood and the Black Wall Street, Tulsa, those things interest me. I want to know the details of it. And right now we're living history. Whether people want to accept that or not.
We absolutely.
You know, 20, 30 years from now, they will talk about this era in 2020.
And for you said you had to research it, like 1960s. Like we didn't have to research that. My parents were born in the 60s, so they lived that.
Yeah.
My grandfather's from Mississippi. He's 90 years old, 92 years old. So imagine the stories he has
I'm
to
sure
tell.
he has some.
So I didn't have to Google search none of
You already
that
knew,
because coming up, it's built in us. We hear those stories, and
Yeah.
a certain feeling that you have towards law enforcement comes from real stories that
Yeah.
your loved ones share with you about things that they experienced. So
I saw pictures too when I researched this from, I believe it was Detroit, and the picture I saw, but it was a black dude who had, I mean, he got the shit beat out of him. I mean, you couldn't even tell he had a face. He had blood all over the place. He was limped over, and two white dudes were holding him up like Weekend at Bernie's, just laughing and smiling and stuff. I mean, that's fucked up.
That's the image that we have had to watch.
Right.
And ever since we could see and understand.
It really makes me
we
mad.
had to watch it and see it in high school. We had to watch it
Yeah.
and see it. We had to do stories on it. We had to go to, what was it called, Conner Perry?
Yeah.
Watch a dad
I hate it.
watch a
Dude,
dad
I hate
act on it.
I
Like, you know what I
hate
mean?
that shit.
These are the images that we have been pushed.
Yeah.
Like, it bothered you at that moment.
Well, it also pisses me off that white people act like this shit doesn't exist, or that you guys shouldn't have a problem with anything, or because. And I even saw a comment that said somebody had mentioned that they should just be lucky slavery still doesn't exist, and that was fucked up. I mean, there's some ignorant ass people.
The
in
bad,
this world.
yeah, I was about to say the bad thing is that those people still exist.
Oh yeah.
And so it's the reason why we still have to have this conversation. It's the
Yeah.
reason why we sit at a table with people that have leadership positions and people that still have a problem with dealing with racism on job sites. Like all the way down to the job site. We're not even talking about inside of offices and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where we know we can see it that it's an inequality. We're talking about just on the outside of people that aren't even striving to make it to those positions. So, you know, you have a select few of us that are actually striving to be in those positions and still get denied or pushed away or, you know, systemically have to challenge with racism. And so it's a constant battle. But I think in our case, like we understand that we know what we're facing.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that are not minorities who feel like it doesn't exist.
Yes,
And
there are.
that's why it's important to educate. You know what I mean? It's just like you wish that was pushed as much in schools and college and everything else. It's like that the real history of this country.
Yeah.
And the same thing in our labor trades. Like we went through a history of organized labor, and it's just like, what's the real history of organized labor? Don't give me the, you know, how we moved through. No. Like let's come to understand how we got to this point and where we're transitioning and why that transition has been difficult, you know, up to this point. And like you said, a lack in numbers. There's no reason why we should have a lack in numbers whatsoever. We have enough. It's plenty of population is clearly grown. So why is there a lack in numbers when it comes to labor trades? We don't offer anything less. So that's the thing. It's like where can we grow from that? We've done a good job, I think, in talking about what other things we can do.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you know, as a white person, when we see, well, like you said, when I see something, I should say something, right? You know, and I'm completely guilty of doing the opposite, which is not saying anything out of fear of like being looked at as, I don't know, you're not a real white guy, or like, you know,
Job Brown?
you're, or like, you know, you're a wuss. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pride. It's pride and fear mixed into one. But speaking out against, I wrote a little statement. Speaking out against white supremacy and race-based violence does not make you anti-white, anti-police, right or left. It makes you pro-justice, pro-black life, pro-accountability, and pro-racial equality. Cared about the life of another isn't political, it's human. I saw that on Instagram, and I thought that was really cool. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that was
One interesting fact, just my little fun fact.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're closing, but my little fun fact is, if you start looking at the numbers, and the same thing, it goes with the Indiana plan. It's an upside down triangle, and it's like the people that apply for an Indiana plan, we can have 100 people. By the time we finish and go through all the class and all that, you end up with 5,
Right.
or 10. But let's do that with the apprenticeship. Let's start how many people apply, or how many people get in, and then how many apprentices. So you might look at, okay, the overall number of apprentices, minority apprentices, you might sit at 20%.
Yeah.
Climb up a little bit. Okay, journeyman, you're gonna go down to about 15, 10%, 14, whatever it is. You go up a little bit to foreman, it's gonna go down again.
Yeah.
You go up to superintendents, you might not have any numbers.
Yeah.
And then you go up to owners, and we don't have any numbers. I mean, so as you go up, you're like, man, so now that goes back to the wage gap that you talked about. Because every time you go up, the wages go up.
Yep.
But those numbers don't go up any higher.
No.
And so, where's the disconnect there?
Yeah.
Does it have to start at the top now and come down? Does it have to start with ownership and then roll down through everything else? What do you do? Because obviously coming from the bottom up is not working
Right.
for minorities.
Right.
So is it okay?
I think if they want change, then they, as in the top, if they truly care about change, then they would make an effort in promoting or bringing up people of color and women up the ranks. Because I a lot of times I don't think it is racism. A lot of times it's just a good old boy network.
Yeah.
So if it's just like me, if it was me and I had something going on, I had a business or something, 9 times out of 10, my friend, it's my drinking buddy might be a black guy, or my friend I used to play sports with, it's probably a black guy. So when I got a vacancy in a spot, I'll probably hire a black guy. So
Yeah.
not that I don't like white guys, it's just the people that I do know are black people. So I think that's a lot of times that's what happens at the top. They happen to be white, and maybe they don't dislike black people, but their drinking buddies or their golfing buddies or whatever happen to be white men. So when they fill a spot, it's with a white man.
People usually stick to their own. They're
Right.
most comfortable
Yeah.
in their own community
Which
with
you
their
don't.
own people. That's.
I think the
normal.
only issue that I find with that mentality is, what is your role? It depends on what your role is. If I'm a journeyman, then my job is to get the job done. If I'm a foreman, my job is to put the right person in the right job to get the job done. If I'm a superintendent, now my job becomes to find the right person for a right set of circumstances. So I have to think a little bit more in depth. Now, if I'm an owner, now I have this plethora of people that I can use in different perspectives. And I think that you are cutting yourself out by not having diversity. Now, we've talked about that, how much diversity can play a part. Now, when it comes to these committee boards and stuff like that, you're talking about being able to speak the language.
Right.
You're talking about being able to be acceptable or intriguing to other people that can help your craft or help your advancement. And so my only issue is just that there's a lack of thinking outside of the box. I can have 20 of my friends in these positions, but does that make me the strongest union I can be? Does that make me the strongest committee I can be? Is my role as the leader, forsaken because I just chose my friends and just taught them the position, whereas I could have chose somebody who had the qualifications, and actually gave them the position that they fit. And I think that's where I have a problem with that good old boy network, where it's just it's a good old boy and y'all knew each other or whatever, But the reality is that is this person qualified? Or could you have used that play, you know what I mean, in a different way? It's just like your car, you know, you playing a card game. Yeah, you still might win the game, but could you have won in a more defining manner? Could you have dominated, you know, the game? Could you have appealed to more people? That's how I look at it, like in being in those roles. So it's just, it's all about people's opinion. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that just because you're not diverse doesn't mean you can't reach the people, doesn't mean you can't be successful. It's just the fact that you have, like we've been talking about, you have people that are willing to be there and at your use, at your disposal, and you either misuse or you ignore. And that's the frustrating part that I think we've seen on so many different levels, where it's just like, well, what am I striving for? If you don't see me as being useful, then I'm just doing it for the, you know what I mean, just to help me sleep better at night. That's about it, you know what I mean? And so that's where, like, drawing the conversation back around is, you know, we want to create that diversity, help make it grow, and do the best we can in our small sectors to help that issue. So, anybody have any closing thoughts?
You know, again, mine's fall back every time. It's just so simple. You know, just do what's right.
Yeah.
Do what's right. At the end of the day, if you know it's wrong, then either correct it or do something to help that situation become right. Just do what's right. Again, you heard it from Baird. You know, at the end of the day, we try to be professionals.
Yeah.
Y'all know this thing can get out of control on the job site where it's so unprofessional, but try to bring it back to we are professionals, try to bring it back to we are brothers, and we're going to do what's right towards one another. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, man.
Definitely appreciate your
Thank you,
insight.
Devin, for real.
Yeah.
Very
Thank you for
educational.
sharing.
Yeah. Good to have perspective from different areas. I mean, we can only touch so many different things, but you can bring a whole different light on some things. So.
You're our first guest.
Hey, I'm honored.
Yeah,
How's
man.
it feel?
I'm honored. Do I get to keep the cup?
Yep.
No,
Yeah, no, that's
I already wrote my mouth on Corona. You're not going to keep it.